All right. Hey,
Welcome.
welcome everybody. It's nice we finally got here together. Wanted to talk a little bit about, why don't we just go around the table first and introduce each other?
I'm Cliff Holt, a pharmacist for a long time.
Okay.
I don't know what to say, guys. Coach me out here.
Well, you've been, you say pharmacist. Tell us a little more about that, what that involves. And you've been doing this for, I understand, about 30 years. And
Yeah, more than that even. So, Cliff Holt. I'm a pharmacist. We've lived down in Southern Utah for 15 years. We own 3 pharmacies in Utah and retail pharmacies as well as compounding, both sterile and non-sterile compounding.
Okay, now tell us a little difference between a compounding pharmacy and a regular pharmacy.
So a regular pharmacy is what you would see when you go in and just see commercialized medications. And in my stores, we have about 3,000 different meds that are made by drug companies. And we find that doesn't really work for everybody. And so when we compound, we can make a customized medication according to what the provider wants for the patient, different dosage forms, different strengths, different ingredients. We always tell the provider, if you can think of it, we can make it.
Okay, great.
Tim Hollingshead, foot and ankle surgeon, a surgical podiatrist.
Okay, but that's not all your career. Your career branched out about 2 decades ago into some other crazy stuff.
I did retire early from active practice and went into speaking on a national circuit, basically teaching hospitals, insurance companies, and doctors how to mitigate risk through patient-centered, focused practice. And then from there, it went into some other consulting things, which eventually led me into the health and nutrition field, where I've done quite a bit of work in formulating, sourcing materials, and manufacturing.
Of what types of things?
Mostly healthy things,
Yeah.
things to drink, consume, things that help with your overall well-being, physically and mentally. And then I also I did a bunch of research and wrote a book and a program to help people overcome certain habits in their lives.
Okay, great. Now, when you say sourcing, I've seen some pictures of you in very exotic places.
Yeah, so I've been to Panaca.
That's a small town in Nevada. No, you've been to other places than that.
Yeah. If it's a third world country, I've probably been stomping around in the muddy waters there. I've sourced materials from South America, Mexico. I helped build a plant down there to manufacture and process nopal juice, and then I used to live in Brazil. I've done a lot of work in the Amazon with acai and some other fruits from that region, as well as Asia, in India with coconuts, Indonesia, Singapore, all over, in China and Korea, South Korea. Middle East, just if it's an interesting nutritional element that has something that can help with your health, we try to find the right farmers and growers and then figure out how to create a supply chain and get it here to the U.S.
Okay, great. I'm Rick Sorensen. I am a physician. I graduated from college with a degree in psychology. And then went to medical school, and have been a physician for about 25 years. Actually, this year is my 25th reunion.
Was that like the gallbladder anniversary?
That was before we had gallbladders, it seems like. No, so I'm a physician. I still actively practice in emergency medicine. I really enjoy some of the stuff we're talking about, and so health and a lot of mind as it affects wellness as well. And then certainly the physiology of the body. Weight loss is a physiologic process. It's chemistry when you come down to it. But there's a lot more that goes into it on a human basis. And so I've really enjoyed being involved with this and like to try and be healthy.
Yeah.
Greg?
My name is Greg Camp. I am a nurse for 8 years, a nurse practitioner for 5 years, so a total of 13 years in the medical field. I run a weight loss clinic locally, and have been doing weight loss for about 4 years. Have actually got certified in weight loss and medical weight loss, and I work in the emergency department when I'm not doing that with Rick. So kind of get to see both sides of the spectrum as far as preventative care and unfortunately, when someone has to come see us in the emergency department. So, yeah, this is something that I'm really passionate about and excited to be here.
Great. So, so the next question is, that's individually who we all are. I guess the big question some people may have is, what is Elevate RX? How did that happen? Anybody want to talk to that?
Elevate RX actually started with a conversation between Cliff and I.
Yeah?
Cliff saw how fat I was and said, "Hey, we've got this stuff that seems to be working for fat people."
But I said also, don't worry about this. I don't want you to worry about this. I'm not anticipating anything.
Right. No, well, that's where it started. And so we started talking about this particular thing he was compounding and the results that people were getting from it. And, of course, my experience in marketing and creating products and putting them out there, I thought, well, I need to talk to our team, which we've all heard from everybody. There's a couple other members to our team who aren't on mics right now, but they're the marketing geniuses actually behind all this. Mm-hmm. And it kind of fell together that, we've got a great amount of experience, knowledge, and a wonderful product. And so it made sense to come together and put it out there.
Okay, great. Now you talk about a product. Everybody, the big thing now is GLP-1, and that's semaglutide. Cliff, you're the pharmacist. Do you want to tell us a little about the history of that, what it is, and why it's a big deal right now?
Yeah, so it's a part of a GLP-1 is the drug category, and those came on the market about 18 years ago for diabetes, for type 2 diabetes, and they found that one of the large side effects is weight loss, right? And so semaglutide, depending on where you are in the country, is a peptide, and peptides form proteins, and they do things in the body. And so semaglutide has been on the market commercially for about 8 years in two drugs, one called Ozempic and one called Wegovy. Ozempic for diabetes, Wegovy for the weight loss.
Those are brand names, right?
Those are the brand names. And those have been out, again, for about 8 years. So we know it's safe and it's effective. And like a lot of medicine, it gets approved for one use. And then when we get millions of people, we figure out, hey, there's side effects to this. And a lot of times there's positive results and it does something totally different than the way they initially thought. So when they studied this drug 25 years ago, the drug studies, they weren't even looking at weight loss. That was just one of the side effects.
Kind of like Rogaine back in the 80s.
Right, that's right. It was a hypertension. It's a hypertensive.
And then, of course, a couple of us here have a really good haircut where maybe you think we would need it, but it turned out to be great for growing hair.
That's right. That's right. There's a lot of other ones. I mean, Viagra, right? That was a blood pressure drug too. And they saw the side effect, and some genius at Pfizer said, yeah, we're not going to worry about that. Let's do this. And they've made billions and billions of dollars.
So with that, then, so this was initially a diabetes drug then. What about someone that would say, I don't have diabetes. Is this something for me?
You know what's crazy is in this country, I don't know I think the numbers are 330 million people in our country. I think there's like 45 or 50 million people that have been diagnosed with diabetes. And that's not the bad news. The bad news, they think there's about another 50 to 80 million people that have pre-diabetes. And the damage is being done to the eyes and the nerves and the kidneys. And they don't really see that they're, until there's something really wrong. So, I don't think that this is a diabetes drug, but it does a lot of other things.
Rick, maybe you can explain the difference between the different diagnoses of diabetes, type 1, type 2.
Yeah, well, so diabetes is, we talk about diabetes, and type 1 diabetes is usually something in younger people whose some of their body functions that manages sugar stops working. And so they need help to do that. They take insulin to help regulate their blood sugar level. Type 2 diabetes is thought of more as something that is acquired as you get older. And that's just that your body essentially stops working the way it ought to. It becomes a little resistant to the insulin that your own body makes. And that affects, again, how it handles sugar and processes all of its energy.
Stores fat.
And stores fat and all those types of things. And so frequently as we get older with our American diet, we tend to get overweight
And our lifestyle too.
Our
right?
lifestyle, yeah, we tend to get overweight. Our lifestyle is a little more sedentary, and that leads to changes in your physiology that then when it reaches a certain point, we call that diabetes, because your body just stops working the right way.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
And there's actually type 3 diabetes, right? Alzheimer's. That's really true. You'll see this coming out a lot more in the next year or two. Type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's.
I have not read that journal article yet.
We're gonna get back to that because there's actually some other things we want to talk about. Okay, so Greg, you've been in kind of the weight loss business. You've got a great company. A lot of people have had some great success with this. Tell us a little bit about what that's been like and about kind of how semaglutide has played a role in that.
Yeah, as mentioned before, I mean, this is it's been around for a long time, fairly new to the weight loss game. When I was in family practice, prescribing this medication regularly for type 2 diabetes, one of the big selling points on this to the patients was, hey, awesome side effect of this is you're probably going to end up losing some weight. So at that time we had an understanding that, that was happening. But, as we've been able to look into this more and as they were able to do more studies, we found out that can be a primary use of the medication and can be effective for that long term. And I think that's the biggest game changer when it comes to medical weight loss when you're using medications to assist with weight loss is that there's several options out there. A lot of them have been around for a long time, and they can be fairly effective. The difference is can you use those medications long term? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And then when it comes down to this medication, it's safe long term. So that's really it's an awesome thing to be able to offer patients, that we don't just have these short-term solutions, be on a medication for 3 to 6 months and then do your best. This thing is really designed for long-term weight loss and weight maintenance. And it's safe to do so. As Cliff had already pointed out, the studies, it's already been around for diabetes for a while. So we have good evidence to support that it's safe long-term if it's tolerated well. It can a lot of times be on the preventative end. A lot of times we don't want to wait until we get diabetes or some other kind of metabolic condition until we start, getting on top of this. And semaglutide has been a really awesome avenue for helping us not only help people lose weight, but also prevent a lot of the unfortunate diseases that come along with being overweight.
So I think this is an important point. I want to maybe elaborate a little bit on. You are involved in a weight loss clinic,
correct?
And that's kind of what we're putting together.
Sure. Not
just a semaglutide clinic, right? I mean, there's more to weight loss than just taking this medicine. And we want to maybe talk about that a little bit. Yeah, so
some of the great benefits of semaglutide is that it's going to help satiation quicker, so meaning that you get fuller faster. There's actually a lot of benefits cravings-wise, so not everyone eats because of appetite, right? What I'm seeing with this medication in practice is that a lot of patients are getting rid of also those cravings that drive them to go and eat something, because once again, we don't always eat when we're hungry. Sometimes it's stress, or sometimes it's that there's a certain type of food around that we kind of go towards, maybe salty or sweet foods. And so it's given people the ability to be able to whereas before maybe you couldn't have walked by a tray of cookies, and now you can most people are reporting pretty easily walk by these foods that once kind of cause this compulsory reaction in us. We've all been there, where we've either overate or ate something we know we probably shouldn't have, and giving you the kind of that extra willpower, so to speak, to be able to kind of fight that. And so
that's an interesting thing. Maybe Cliff, you could talk to that a little bit. And that's been my experience on this as well. It makes it easier to make better choices, to eat a little bit less, to not clean up the whole plate and have an extra dessert. And so there's physiology behind that, right? This is not just like it's this magic thing that works on your mind. Can you talk maybe a little about what exactly does that do in the body that makes it easier to do those things?
Yeah. It works about 3 or 4 different ways. There's 4 different ways it works in the body. One, it controls insulin release. It also affects glucagon release too. It also slows down the motility of everything moving through the GI system, and that's where so you don't feel hungry as fast. There's also some other benefits, as Greg was talking about with the cravings. In fact, a lot of people eat out of habit, right? We just get in the same old rut and do the same thing, eating the same things, usually not good ideas. And so this helps you. This is the first weight loss drug that I've seen in my career that you don't have to follow a diet. Your body will actually regulate for yourself with this. This drug will help your body regulate. And so you don't feel hungry. You don't have those cravings like you said before. And so, in fact, if you overeat, you'll probably get nauseous, right? It's kind of a self-regulating process.
Can I add to that, Cliff? Sorry.
Please.
Yeah.
What I'd like to add to that is, as Cliff had pointed out, the medication is going to almost in some ways force you to be on a diet. One thing that I like patients to do in the clinic is to be mindful of the changes that are happening with their body. And so that, as Cliff had pointed out, we a lot of times eat with habits. A lot of things we do is very, humans in general are habit driven. And so to be mindful of those, just like you develop those bad habits when you're on the medications, trying to develop those good habits. So that if for one reason or another you decide to get off the medication, you've maybe met your goal and you decide that you want to get off and you don't want to be on a maintenance dose or anything, that you've hopefully developed some really, really good habits in order to be able to maintain that. Because the last thing you want to do is do all this work, pay money and get down and then go back up. In fact, that can actually be more detrimental to your health than losing the weight in the first place. You just as well has stayed large. Or overweight. So I just, I agree. You a lot of times it's kind of an unconscious, you will just naturally not want to eat more food. You probably won't be able to, or you'll get nauseous because that slowed gastric emptying, you just get fuller quicker.
So when you say slowed gastric emptying or gastric motility, what that means is when I eat, it goes into my stomach and then it sits there. So medically, you think about this, people who don't have a stomach or can't use their stomach and have to be fed with, around their stomach into the intestine, they for like 10 and 12 and 16 hours a day, they have this slow drip of nutrients that goes into their intestine because that's how that has to happen. We have the ability to use our stomach as kind of a big sack, a receptacle.
It's a reservoir, right?
It's a reservoir.
Yeah.
So you eat a meal, that allows us to eat some meals spaced out. So you eat a meal and it sits in your stomach and your stomach kind of churns it up and pushes it forward. And so what we're talking about is it makes that churning up and mushing forward slower.
Slows it down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I eat a little bit of food or less than what I normally stuff my stomach with, it kind of sits there longer, and that makes me feel full earlier and longer.
Exactly
Right?
right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I want to go back to Greg mentioned, he was talking about the long-term studies. Semaglutide has some protective elements about it as well. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, the studies would indicate that there's a lot of additional benefits besides just weight loss. Now, we know that cardiovascular-wise, you're going to have a lot of benefits cardiovascular-wise from losing weight, but there's actually a lot of cardioprotective mechanisms that come along with GLP-1 medications or semaglutide. And so reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, all these big ones. And there's also in terms of, and Cliff had already kind of mentioned it, and we'll maybe talk about it more later, but that diabetes type 3, which is Alzheimer's or dementia, the cognitive benefits. They found that there's a lot of cognitive benefits, including there's several studies going on right now that I've read about that are looking into the actual prevention of developing dementia, or at least delaying the onset. For someone that has a strong family history of this is definitely going to be on your mind, because when you see what people go through during that process, it's very tough. It's very tough to watch and manage and help take care of your parents or loved ones that are going through this. So if there is an avenue to be able to prevent some of that, or at least, if nothing else, delay the onset, that's going to be huge.
It's a brutal process, isn't it?
It's also renoprotective, so nephroprotective. A lot of times...
So you're talking about kidneys.
Kidneys, exactly. And so there's a lot of protective measures there. And there's a lot of benefits inflammation-wise when you're consuming less food. There's been studies done well before this medication that talks about the idea of consuming less food actually helps slow the aging process. So the medication essentially is not going to maybe slow that, but when we consume less food, we age slower. And so, who doesn't want to age a little bit slower? So
Yeah.
And caloric restriction is tough. I mean, who wants to do that, right? Especially in our day and age.
Yep.
There's so many great food out there to eat.
it is.
So there's other things we can do to help with that, mimic that caloric restriction too, which will help the anti-aging process.
Sure.
I was going to mention something about what you said about the. Now I can't remember. I'm having that moment.
You should have thought of that before you got dementia.
I know, isn't that right? It'll come back.
All right, we'll come back to that. So I wanted to, as we were talking about all this, I'm just thinking about kind of my own experience. So I've actually been taking this medication for about 3.5 months. I was doing really well, being disciplined last fall, and then ended up going on a cruise the day after Thanksgiving, and then it was the holidays. And then I went on another cruise.
I'm hearing a lot of justification here.
So
Rick.
by it was January 21st of this year, and we got back from a cruise with my daughter, and I had kind of erased all the gains I had made many months in the last year, and I weighed 235 pounds. That's the most I've weighed in my life. So now 3 months later, and then with my wife and I, we started doing this together, and I'm now down to 203. So I've lost about 30 pounds. And it's been my experience with that has been just kind of what you're talking about, the physiology of this. But it's interesting because I've always been one that's like, I really like good food, and I like to eat an extra meal. Even I mean, I like a dessert, but I would rather have another big plate of meat, or whatever.
I'm with you.
And it just is easier to make those good decisions. Greg talks about it in his clinic a lot. Get some extra steps and activity levels, and just eating a little bit less, not getting crazy about some caloric restriction diet or anything. But it just is easier to eat less. Working in the emergency department, to get home after a late night shift, you get home at 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't know what it is, but I think you'll know what we're talking about. Like you get home and you would think, I just want to go to bed. But really, what you want to do is eat a bowl of Fruit Loops.
Absolutely.
It's like this,
Like 2.
or 2 or 4, and now it's just you don't have that. Or you walk past a plate of cookies and you're like, wow, those look really good. I'm gonna eat some cookies, and you eat one, and you're like, that was really good, and I'm good with that. That's kind of been my experience with that.
And I would say that patients in the clinic, and I've seen hundreds on this medication, are really reflecting the same thoughts.
So tell us a little bit about your brother.
So my brother is he was struggling with his eating. He ate late at night, which can also be a struggle, for when you're wanting to lose weight, or at least not gain weight. He has some other extracurricular habits. Likes to drink a little bit, likes to smoke marijuana. And the thing that I noticed with him and that I've been seeing in practice regularly is that now this is something anecdotal, right? This is something I'm seeing in practice. I don't know that they've had any studies on this yet. I'm sure they're to come because I'm seeing it so much in clinic, but. It's not just his cravings for food. He's been on the medication. He's had great success in losing weight and managing his eating so much better. He's eating a lot less. He really notices that. But his other habits, the drinking, the smoking marijuana, he just said that he's basically lost the desire. If he does have a drink, he can. In fact, just 3 days ago, he said he tried to have a beer and he couldn't finish it. And so, there's so much to be said about, I did have a patient that came in a week ago. He was admittedly a binge drinker, he said, I don't drink a lot during the week, but boy, the weekends I'll binge drink. And he said, and he will not stop. He has not drank since he started this medication. He said he's never been effective in the years he's tried to quit this binge drinking. And so, like I said, this is more anecdotal, not really in the studies, but there is a ton of benefits. When you shut off the part of your brain that has you wanting to eat stuff and the sweets and all that other stuff, those are just other addictive behaviors. If you look at it from an alcohol perspective or whatever it is, it also appears clinically to really stifle those as well. So, because sometimes drinking is a problem for people that are looking to lose weight, and it's not saying you can't have a drink, but it's once again, just like the food, it's be reasonable about it.
And it makes it easier to be reasonable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that that eating is a pattern we all have, right? And we all develop our own specific patterns around eating, how we believe in what food does for us. Some understand it's fuel, others it's for pleasure or socializing or whatever. And on this medication, on the semaglutide, it seems that it allows people to recognize more readily how they're feeling, and if they'll lean into that, they can actually begin to interrupt some of these patterns and change them, so that they're not just losing weight by the medication, but they're also changing the way they think about their food.
Yeah. It's really in clinic, I call that creating a balance and a healthy relationship with food. Because really, let's be honest, most Americans, I'm guilty, do not always have a healthy relationship with food. And so it gives you an opportunity
I'm in counseling
to
right
reflect.
now for that.
Is that what happens when you take down a box of Krispy Kreme donuts?
It
by
is.
yourself?
It is. It feels good at the time until you're done, and then you look at that empty box, and you're like, oh, well, that was maybe not the best idea. I should have shared with Rick. It is really creating that healthy relationship with food. That's why I was talking about earlier, really being kind of mindful of that. You're on a medication. It's going to help you develop these really great habits. And I think that next step to be able to make these more long-term habits is to really think about what you're doing. Oh, I ate much less than I normally would at a restaurant. I wasn't even able to finish my whole plate, and then do it with a little bit of a purpose. And when you have that help with that, I think that behavior-wise and really, like I said, that healthy relationship with food develops naturally.
Yeah.
And so you're not sitting there fighting yourself and beating yourself up. Because the mental game of this, as Tim, as you know, it's the mental game of weight loss is as much as anything. And this medication appears to make this a much easier transition mentally and physically. And so
It's interesting. Some people will comment that certain foods will change the way they think about it. For example, if they eat too much fat, they'll have a reaction to it that they didn't have before. If they eat too much sugar while on semaglutide, that they'll have a different reaction to what they used to have. And if they're being aware of that, like you said, then they can conscientiously make a change in how they think about that relationship with their food.
sure.
Okay, so I started using this almost on accident. My wife was.
Did you fall on it or something?
No. So this is an interesting. My wife had been trying, walking and exercising and dieting and kind of felt like she was at this big long plateau. She's like, this isn't working. I feel like if I wasn't doing these things, I'd probably balloon up and be even more heavy. But I don't feel like I'm losing these extra pounds that I want to. And so after seeing her try all these things and knowing, about your clinic and these things, I thought, I'm going to get this for her for Christmas, right? The classic gift. I'm going to get you a weight loss program, right?
It's like giving her a vacuum.
And
So have you moved back into the bedroom yet?
No, but I know her, and I knew she would really appreciate that, and thought that, it would be helpful. And then, I was talking to Greg about that, decided, what, this might be something better to do together. And so actually what I gave my wife for Christmas is, let's do this together. And so we've been doing it together, and I want to maybe have somebody comment on that. Like it's been helpful for both of us, I think, to have someone else. Like it makes it not just a solo thing, that there's a community. And even though our community is a community of two, it's been very helpful to be with someone on this journey as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I see it in practice every day. I have mother and daughter come in together. I have husband and wife, of course, probably my most common couples appointment is a husband and wife, trying to get things dialed in. And truly, people can be successful without having their partner or someone close to them on board. But the studies, even the weight loss studies, well before once again semaglutide was out here as an option for us. The studies would support that having that accountability partner is huge, and that's not just for diet, exercise, all that. It's for all kinds of things that you want to accomplish. So. I do notoriously see that couples that do this together tend to be more successful. It's not that you can't do it on your own. It's just it is easier to be able to stay true to it and have someone to bounce things off of. It's you go sit at a dinner table in a restaurant, and if you just stop talking for a second and listen for a second, you'll probably pick up at least one of the conversations is going to be about someone wanting to exercise more, wanting to eat better, things like that. It's talked about all the time. And when you can get on the same page with your partner or with a friend or with a loved one, it makes it that much easier and them as a sounding board to say like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing on the medication. Are you feeling that way too? Oh, well, hey, we've been doing so great with our eating. Why don't we go and exercise today? Just things that are really positive, healthy things that are naturally healthy, but sometimes hard to do in our busy lives. So, Rick and his wife are a perfect example of how that's illustrated. Is when these two parties get on the same board. They do really, really well.
So, great. Rick, maybe you can talk to the sort of the plateau effect that can happen with this.
Yeah. So and Greg probably has seen this more clinically as well. But we start a new lifestyle. Not a diet, a lifestyle, and this is part of that. And what I'm hoping in my mind is I'm going to take my weight and decrease to my goal weight. And we sometimes think of that as like a steady slope downward.
Like a linear move.
Like I'm going to start losing weight and it's going to kind of go down and go down. And that's really not how that often works. I'm losing a few pounds, I lose 5 pounds and I'm really excited. And then I hit this plateau. And for a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks, sometimes I'm kind of staying about the same. I go down a couple, went up a couple, and then I hit another sort of down slope, and that's much more common than just this steady slope down. And the problem with that is sometimes it's part of that mind game. Like it's easy to get discouraged when you're at a plateau and you think, man, for last week and a half, I haven't lost a pound.
So checking your weight every day is probably not a good idea.
It's not necessarily the best idea, but unless you understand that this isn't going to be something that every day you're going to lose a pound.
Right.
But over time, is that kind of what you've been experiencing?
That is what I've been seeing, and it is. I mean, I kind of talk about it in clinic as far as the we all like the slide, right? You go to the park and everyone likes the slide because you get to go down nice and smooth, and it's the fun part. Weight loss is more like the back end of the slide. It's the stairs. You go down and then you plateau for a minute, and then consistency is what ultimately usually breaks through to that next plateau, or excuse me, that next down, and then a plateau again. And it is what I see in practice. And some people will come in, they only lost a few pounds in a month, and they may be are even a little frustrated about the pounds, but they're like, boy, I had this month I lost as little as any month I've had, but I had 7 more people comment on how they've noticed I've been losing weight and my clothes fit better and all that stuff. So, your body, just like you didn't gain the weight overnight, your body's not going to lose it overnight. And our bodies have protective mechanisms in place to make sure that we don't lose that weight too rapidly. Your body is all about making sure that you're okay. And so, your body will naturally just put on a stepwise process, put you down. And sometimes those plateaus last for, 2-3 weeks. And that can be frustrating when you're doing all the right things, you're on the medication. And then consistency. Usually, once you get through that consistent part of the plateau and you've been doing the right thing, you'll see that next drop. And of course that's exciting because then you go down more. And that's another thing to even comment on is a lot of times that's when we make the determination of going up to your next dose. So sometimes these plateaus happen, and we're kind of frustrated with the progress, but you're maybe on the lower dose of the medication, and at that point it gives us an opportunity to maybe bump that dose up a little bit, get a little more effectiveness on the medication side, but also help you kind of break through that plateau to get to the next level. And that's kind of the option we didn't have a lot with a lot of other medications. It was this is the set dose. If that doesn't continue to work for you, your appetite comes back, we're maybe going to just have to change medications completely. You're going to have to maybe work out that much harder, eat that much less. And this medication, we have so much flexibility that, oftentimes the lower doses are effective at helping you start to lose the weight. And then as we go up, a lot of times can be reflexively with how you're doing on the medication.
So to recap that, basically stay away from the day-to-day kind of checking where I'm at to more of a long-term trend look towards progress.
Yeah, I tell people if you're going to weigh in, everyone feels differently about the scale. My kind of just in practice, and even through own personal experience of going through weight loss and then trying to maintain has been that if you're really focused on the scale and the numbers all the time, it can be very distracting. You lose 2 pounds. It's like someone walking up and patting you on the back and saying, "Great work." You go up 2 pounds. The next day, even though you've been doing well, it's like someone coming up and saying, "Have you put on a few pounds?" So a lot of times we can get in this mental funk with the scale. And so what I recommend for most patients is try not to weigh in more than once a week. If you do weigh in once a week, pick one day in the morning, weigh in and then just be done with it. If you can focus on how you're feeling throughout the week or throughout the month, before you weigh in, and more focus on the process than you do the scale, I find that the two will match up. If you're feeling good, you feel like you're doing well, and the process is going well, typically the scale will match that. If you feel like you haven't been doing very good, most likely the scale is going to reflect that as well. Now, the medication obviously gives you a leg up on that. You can still lose weight if you're not making any effort at all. But once again, a little bit of effort goes a long way with this medication. And so if you can kind of get away from that obsession with the scale will take care of itself, I can assure you.
Now, you talked about the things that people notice, like you look better. My clothes feel better. I fit better in my clothes, and that sometimes doesn't necessarily go along with a number on the scale either. Yep. Because we often talk about body composition changes. We're trying to get a little more muscle. We're trying to get a little less fat. Trying to get a little less visceral fat, kind of the stuff inside the gut, and those don't weigh the same. So you can actually be getting more healthy and even smaller, but not necessarily reflecting that on the scale as much as you might hope.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see it all the time in practice. Someone comes in, we do a body composition analysis when patients come in, and it's one thing that we look at as besides just a weight, looking at their muscle mass and looking at their fat, looking at their visceral fat, which Rick had mentioned is the more stubborn kind of internal fat that we build up over time, and it's a little more stubborn fat, so it takes a little longer to go away. And so looking at those factors and not just looking at a number on a scale is always a great way to be able to kind of get a better idea of not just looking at the number on the scale for the weight-wise, but looking at all these other factors. And then once again, I'm only 3 pounds down, but I can fit into those jeans that I couldn't fit into 2 months ago. That's big. Yeah. I have some people that don't come in with a weight goal. They say, look, I remember when I was 35, and I remember when I fit into these jeans, and my goal is to fit into those jeans. And the weight is not always necessarily a reflection of when they can fit comfortably back into those jeans. And so, of course, weight loss is going to happen naturally as you lose fat, but it's also not painting the whole picture. Yeah. Someone can lose a lot of muscle and do some really unhealthy stuff. They will lose weight, but it's not necessarily, that doesn't mean they're healthier.
May not change their pant size or their shirt size.
Exactly.
Yeah, the scale is just one measure, right? Sure. It's just one measurement. And we tell our patients that, hey, if you're just doing, it's a once a week injection, right? When we do this semaglutide, that's the day you should weigh yourselves, right? Just do it once a week. And then you're not going to have a lot of disappointment because you're going to lose weight over the course of the month, right? So you might have 1 or 2 weeks where you're kind of plateauing, but yeah, don't focus on that.
Sure.
You mentioned it's an injection. That's how it's administered, right?
Orally and injection, but we're talking injection, and it's a lot lower doses needed. It's way more effective to use the injection. It's once a week, and injections really scare a lot of people away. But this is a sub-Q injection, meaning like an insulin syringe, a 1/4-inch needle, super skinny, the skinniest needle they make.
So it's not the length of the needle; it's the diameter.
It's how wide it is. That's right. That's right. And so this is super simple. And we have had so many patients that are just needle averse, right? They're just petrified of needles. We walk them through their first dose, and it's like, that was it. You know, they're all shocked about this. You don't really, you don't feel it. It's not even like a bee sting. You just don't feel that tiny needle going in the skin.
Okay, so talking back about the medicine semaglutide, so some people may wonder why don't I just have my doctor prescribe this and get my insurance to pay for it and get the name brand? What's up with the compounding and all that? Like, why is that a thing?
That's, this is a question we answer 100 times a day. And it's a great question. So those commercial products we talked about at the beginning, they're over $1,000 a month is what the cost is. Now, if you want it for weight loss, your insurance is not going to pay for it. They'll pay for it in certain indications if you have diabetes. When the pharmacy sends a claim through, because there's a lot of coupons out there right now to bring that cost down. But for that coupon to work, the pharmacy sends your information to your insurance company. And if we're sending through an Ozempic or a Mounjaro, who are indicated only for type 2 diabetes, your insurance company is going to flag you as a type 2 diabetic, even if they're not paying for the drug. That's a bad thing. Your rates are going to go up at some point. Life insurance rates are going to go up. There's a couple auto companies now that are looking at your health profiles. And so you just don't want to do that. So the compounded version of this, it started because the drug manufacturers couldn't keep up with the demand, right? And so as a compounder, we cannot make an identical commercial product. That's a no-no. We have to change it a little bit to protect so their patents protect their products. However, if it's on the short list, the FDA short list, which means the drug companies cannot keep up with the demand in the country, then the compounders can come in and start making that. So that's where we started doing this 6 months ago, 7 months ago, because our patients and our providers in our community were saying we can't get this drug. And so we were able to source the ingredients, put together a formula, and look, we don't have a lot of stockholders at the pharmacy, so we don't have to charge over $1,000 for a month's worth of medication. It's very affordable.
It's probably important to point out, too, that we're talking about using a medication, what we would consider to be off schedule a little bit. It's not, like you said, indicated for weight loss.
It is now.
It is now,
yeah.
But previously it wasn't.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this isn't like a groundbreaking or ice-breaking opportunity. This has gone on for decades, where medication will come out, like we said earlier, and they find out that, hey, it works good for this too. And so it gets used that way until finally it becomes approved, right. and then opens up the use of that.
Benadryl is a classic example. Benadryl used to be a prescription only, and it was for allergies, right? It goes over the counter, and what do we use Benadryl for? 95% of the time, it's for sleep because it causes drowsiness.
Well, and I remember when Motrin or ibuprofen used to be prescription.
That's right. That's showing our age, Tim.
Okay. I'll get my walker now and creep out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, but being compounded like that, it's still something that is a prescription medication.
Definitely a prescription medication. Semaglutide is a prescription medication no matter how you get it, right? And that's a great point, Rick. Back in the HCG days when we were making HCG, that wasn't a patented or trademarked name. That was 3 initials, right? You could put HCG on a Snickers bar if you wanted to, right? And so the gas stations had HCG, in a bottle, and there was no human chorionic gonadotropin, which is what HCG stands for, in those, because that takes a prescription. So if you're seeing anything like this that's saying without a prescription, that's not what's in the bottle.
Okay, good. But so being a prescription medication, this is something that I need to have a visit with a physician or my medical provider. They need to coordinate with that, and there's some things that we worry about, right? I mean, one of the reasons that this is a prescription medication and you should talk to your medical provider or a medical provider about this, is there are some things that need to be considered before starting it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few things that are pretty well, I think, agreed upon that are not worth the risk. Thyroid, a history of thyroid cancer in the family. Now, this comes down to two specific types of thyroid cancer, both quite rare. But if you do have a strong family history or personal history of these, this is not the medication for you. Once again, very, very rare. But definitely you'd want to talk to a medical provider about that, which is why this is a prescription. There's a screening process that happens there. Also, if you have a chronic history of like pancreatitis, this is also something that is, your pancreas is going to be worked more, and it can put you at risk for pancreatitis. It's very rare. But it does happen and of course, if you had chronic pancreatitis, it would probably put you in that category of at least strongly discussing the risk versus benefits of this medication, because it could make you more prone to getting that pancreatitis. There are some other side effects such as hypoglycemia. We talked about earlier, treatment of type 1 or type 2 diabetes can include insulin. And I've had some patients even ask, like, well, is this similar to insulin? Why couldn't we use insulin? Isn't that fairly cheap? And the truth is it's not similar to insulin. Insulin is really just automatically lowering your blood sugars, doing what should be done by your own body internally. This medication actually is glucose responsive. So it's not going to, it normally shouldn't cause hypoglycemia, which is a low blood sugar. It should only respond to elevated sugars in the blood or elevated glucose in the blood. So hypoglycemia still can happen with it, but it's very rare. I don't see it that often. And normally you'd have signs and symptoms of what you'd normally have with low blood sugar, maybe some clamminess, some dizziness, feeling nauseous, and you weren't feeling nauseous before on the medication. In this case, most people can eat something small, and when those symptoms subside, you can kind of pretty well tell that, that was the case. But so really, as far as profile for being able to be safe for most people, it really is. Young and old, they've actually gotten the approval from the FDA,
Mm-hmm.
the indication down to 12 years old.
With a certain BMI, that's correct.
Yep, with a certain BMI. Now, I don't know that we're going to be going into the pediatric realm quite yet. I don't know that we're there yet, but because that's obviously, can be a challenging area. But the truth is that, down to 12 years old can take this medication, and up to as old as needs be. And so it's really got a wide, really a wide net. Most patients can take it and tolerate it well.
And one of the reasons for that, my understanding is that even the American Academy of Pediatrics recognizes that larger children grow up to be larger adults, and larger adults tend to have a lot more health problems that we've been talking about, and so and this being safe enough is worth reducing those risks.
I think what the message of the American Pediatrics Association, recommending aggressive, weight loss and or weight maintenance if they're at a good weight, down to that age, is it really pushes the point that the earlier you can get on this, the better. It's not that there's a too late time, right? If you're saving for retirement, it's better to start at 50 than just to say forget it. But it would be a lot easier if you started when you were 20. The point is that your health is going to be better off. You're not going to have to undo a whole bunch of metabolic issues and things like that if you can get started on something earlier, get this under control, develop some good habits, and then maintain your weight. And this medication is safe, it's effective, and it's given people the opportunity, whereas there's just not a lot out there for, including pediatric patients, but even older patients over the age of 60. There's, you're really limited in your options. And I will tell you, I see a lot of patients over the age of 60. Just because you're 60 doesn't mean you're done. I have a lot of patients, including couples, that come in over the age of 60, do very well on this medication, and are like, where the heck has this been my whole life?
I heard the 60s is new 30.
You probably have heard that.
So, Greg, you mentioned some things about side effects. So I've been on this for about 2.5 months now, and down almost 20 pounds. And, I'm seeing all the benefits of, clothes that didn't fit better now. And I think, I think I look better.
We do too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But there are some side effects that I've noticed, which are not consistent with other people that I talk to. Some are. For example, the nausea thing. Occasionally, you get a little wave of nausea. And in my case, eating a little something solves the problem for a while. Another time, I've experienced a little bit of indigestion or heartburn.
Sure.
And but that's all been in passing. Nothing has been permanent as far as a side effect. Quite tolerable. And in fact, if I think about what I've eaten last, I can tie that to the effect almost, the side effect, and I can change the way I think about that food.
Sure.
But what are some of the side effects?
Nausea is the
That we
biggest
see
side effect,
mostly.
right?
Nausea.
Is the number one. And especially when we titrate this dose up, when we step up, then we can see that nausea maybe for a day or two. One of the things we don't talk about too much that we should be talking about is digestive enzymes, a great over-the-counter supplement. And remember, Doctor, you were talking about how your GI motility is kind of slowing down. Everything's kind of sitting there in the gut. So we don't want it sitting there and getting compact, right? So digestive enzymes will help liquefy that. So when it does go through, it goes through a lot easier. They'll take care of a lot of those side effects that you're seeing with the nausea and the indigestion.
So you talk about taking some digestive enzymes to help mitigate that, get
Those
rid of
side
that
effects.
side effect. There's other things too that I think you've noticed have been helpful with using this, some B12, some vitamin D, like checking some of those levels and maybe even supplementing with some vitamins that can be helpful with weight loss?
Yeah, the biggest thing that happens when someone is trying to lose weight, right? The big thing that we oftentimes will make the biggest difference is cutting calories, right? This medication makes that much easier. The problem we run into when people are cutting calories is when you cut calories, you are also taking out a good portion of food that you were once eating and getting that nutritional value from. The thing that I'm seeing in clinic, and then the thing that you hear in the news about things like Ozempic face and stuff like that, these all come from unfortunately people getting these from places that aren't giving them the full story. When you reduce your amount of calories, you still need to be nutritionally sound. You need to be getting all those micro and macronutrients. We won't get too much into that, but your macronutrients, which your protein, your fats, your carbs, those are all important. But also
within the right ratios, right?
Within the right ratios, exactly. We like an emphasis on protein, not necessarily going keto by any means, but definitely getting that protein in. The micronutrients being that all your vitamins and minerals. I've found a lot of people do really well with vitamin D and fish oil, a good multivitamin. The things that you could possibly be missing out on by obviously decreasing your overall caloric intake, because it's not just about the calories, which is essentially energy for your body. Right. It really is about those nutrients, right? So if you've ever seen someone lose a lot of weight and you're like, boy, they've lost a lot of weight, but they don't actually look better. A lot of times, unfortunately, it is because, they did maybe a fad diet, or they really overdid it and almost starved themselves to the point of where they lost a lot of weight, but they're not overall that much more healthy. So keeping in mind that this is the idea behind this medication is not meant to cause you to be able to have the ability to starve yourself, but it's a reasonable calorie intake. I don't necessarily promote calorie counting because most people won't stick with that. So, but just getting a reasonable calorie intake, including nutritious foods and supplementing where needed. There's great supplements out there for fruits and veggies and protein and all these things that we can take advantage of.
So you would recommend a calorie-dense diet versus or a nutrient-dense diet.
Yes.
Of course, we're all on calorie-dense diets. But you would recommend a nutrient-dense diet, so fruits and vegetables balanced instead of the boxes of Krispy Kremes.
Absolutely.
And I have nothing against Krispy Kreme.
Sure, no. The truth is that having that Krispy Kreme every now and again is not a bad thing. I think if we try to avoid all bad foods, all things like that, all together. Once again, that just becomes a fad diet. Do we actually live like that, and can we live like that? And the truth is that most likely the answer is no. It's not a fault of anyone. It's just most likely we can't. So it really is focusing on the fact that you're going to have a lot more control. Like we talked about, and Rick had mentioned it. His experience is he feels like he can pass on the sweets or something that he normally would have, or a significant amount of food, and in those cases can oftentimes be mindful of what he's eating. Okay, well, if I don't really care about eating right now and I'm just doing it for the nutritional value, make good choices. Get your veggies and stuff like that, because now you're really eating to supply your body with the nutrients it needs and be healthier. Everyone has the same reasons for wanting to lose weight. They want to be healthier and they want to look better. A lot of times people won't say that out loud, I want to look better, because it maybe sounds vain or something like that. It's okay to want to look better. It's okay for that to be one of the reasons, but everyone else that has the other reason is that they want to be healthier. They want to feel better.
Well, you're going to feel better
Yeah.
as you get older with less weight on your joints.
Absolutely.
And your feet won't hurt as much.
Sure.
This is 60 the new 30 talking.
Yes, that is absolutely. And but Rick, you were telling us about some interesting anecdotes, which we found have a little bit of humor in them, about people maybe taking too much of the semaglutide in an injection.
Yeah, we've actually seen this in the emergency department. I probably have 3-ish times in the last couple of weeks. People, they're not used to administering people are used to a pill. They're not used to giving an injection. It's not something that a lot of people have done before. And drawing it up in a syringe, and so we've had a couple of people who, on their very first dose, which is supposed to be very, very small, it's a tiny little dose, one
tenth of 1 ml
of a milliliter, which is about 1/20th of a tiny little vial,
Like a couple of drops.
a couple of drops.
It really is.
And instead they've drawn up the whole syringe full
1
and injected
milliliter.
it.
So
my.
10
Into
times the dose.
10 times the dose,
my.
and they've really had some bad side effects.
Without stepping up to it. Just
Correct, just immediately first
my.
dose.
So what was their complaint?
Nausea.
It'll always be nausea.
Yeah, and that's going to last for days.
And some people, that's what we titrate up to in some patients is a full milliliter. So it's not it's not an unsafe dose.
No.
But we want to titrate up or go up slowly to mitigate those side
Right,
effects.
and usually that's a process of a couple of months to get to that dose.
Several months, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing we should talk about real quickly. With the commercial, it's a dial a dose. It's not like an insulin pen where you can dial a dose. It's an on or off with the Wegovy or the Ozempic, not a dial a dose. So if we can get it in a vial, we can really customize that dose to what the patient really is going to want and be effective with not as many side effects.
I agree with that, Cliff. I have some patients that don't really, agree with, their body doesn't agree with the titration schedule as it is set up by Ozempic or Wegovy. And so sometimes instead of, let's say we would go from 20 units to 40 units, I instead go to 30 units because they've been doing pretty well at 20. They needed a little extra push, but we were, trying to mitigate those side effects. And so we go up a little bit slower for them. And that's why it's really important, and Rick had brought this up before, is it's really important that's why it's nice to have these medical providers that we're going to be able to line people up with it, because they're used to prescribing the medication. They can talk to you about, hey, this is what to expect. This is what you're going to be drawing up, whereas when you're getting this from maybe your regular family doctor, if they're not, even the compounded version, if they're not used to, prescribing this medication, they may not have a lot of insight into tell you, well, this is what you're going to get and this is what you're going to be looking at. And so,
And this is what to do about that
Exactly.
if it happens. Yeah.
And so, like, if you go to a great pharmacy like Cliff's over here, of course, they're going to be able to help you and educate you and things like that. But, in the case of Elevate RX, what we've done is that we obviously have it shipped to you and then give you the opportunity, obviously, to talk with your medical provider about, hey, how is this dosed, and what should I be looking for, and we're going to have instructional videos to let you know exactly what to expect and how you're going to draw up your medication and all that stuff. So you really do get the additional information that, frankly, it's nothing against family practice people. I worked in family practice, really the amazing people. But they have about 5 minutes with you. They're not going to be able to spend that additional time that for your questions, as well as to be able to give you that education on, hey, this is what you're going to see when you get the medication, and this is how you do it.
And our providers really are semaglutide experts, right? A family practice, and again, nothing against those guys, but they're seeing 30 patients a day, 35 patients a day, probably 35 different indications or things they're talking about, right? Our guys, our providers, they're experts on semaglutide.
And try to spend a lot of time with them during cold and flu season. It's nearly impossible. They're just flooded with patients.
It looks like we have maybe just a couple minutes left. Ben, Scott, is there anything you think of you want us to address?
We have had a couple thousand patients on this in our little pharmacy, right?
Just that you're aware of.
So.
And
Greg's got several more, a couple hundred more.
A couple hundred patients have been on this medication. I don't know the exact count, but it's definitely in the hundreds. Just seen a lot of success. Most people tolerate it well. We did talk about side effects earlier. Most of the side effects are truly one of those. We have dangerous side effects and we have annoying side effects, as I would call them. And most of the side effects, really, I don't see a lot of the dangerous ones coming up. It's more so the annoying ones. We try to help mitigate those as much as possible and give you advice on, hey, what do we do about this? But most people that are actually able to endure a few days of some maybe side effects, some GI stuff, usually as your body gets used to this new molecule, it really is. You get used to it, side effects go away, and then you're able to move forward on these upper doses that typically, once the side effects kind of fade, I'm not noticing a lot of people get a lot of side effects back. Even as they go up on dose, it might be minimal, but once again, as their body adjusts and they're able to really manage that, they go away, their body gets used to it, and now they're just getting a lot of the positive things. And I was doing a weight loss clinic before semaglutide really caught fire, and I was having success with this, but I will tell you, semaglutide has been a game changer in my clinic, even on this small scale, and that's really where Elevate RX comes in. Is that we were all seeing the benefits of this medication, and we just wanted to have the opportunity to take it to a larger scale. And so, because I think we are all, Cliff from the pharmacy side, Rick personally and in practice, Tim and all his research, as well as the other members that are involved here, we've just all seen the benefits of this, and we're like, how do we get this to people so that they can also realize the benefits? And I've seen so many in practice that are losing weight and doing really well.
No, that's a good point about trying to get this to more people, just because we have those. I think we all have those kind of individual success stories. Just yesterday in the ER, I was talking to one of the nurses who works there, and she's been on this for 7 months now. And I asked her, I was like, how much weight have you lost? Because, you look really good. And she said, I've lost 50 pounds. That was my goal.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
She only ever got up to about half of that full dose we're talking about. Did really well, has made a lot of these lifestyle changes, feels like she's able to eat well. And she says, I'm weaning off of this, and I think I'm good where I'm at. She says, I've never felt better in years. And so really it's that kind of thing that I think we're all seeing in our circles that we just want to bring to a wider audience and really experience that feeling better, healthier lifestyle.
So the bottom line is it works. It's breakthrough in its application now for this particular thing, and it's available to many, to everybody.
And very affordable.
And very affordable. And we're here to as a team to help with all of the whole process going on.
We're about our patient success. Mm-hmm.
Well, one last thing that we can just really quickly talk about. In the groups on Facebook, I'm seeing people talk about pretty dramatic, drastic changes. But what's just a general kind of expectation?
So a lot of people have some of these drastic results, very quick results, but most people it's a little slower process. A lot of these studies were a couple years long, right?
It was 16 months, 32 pounds when they first came out, right? And we're seeing
you're seeing that in 3
way
4
better
months now.
results than that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we don't even have people going to the upper dose, right? They're still step 2, 3, and they're still losing that 30, 35, 40 pounds.
But if someone doesn't experience that dramatic thing, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not working for them. It's not helping them.
That's correct.
You know, I think that, and sorry to interrupt, Cliff. I think what I'm seeing in practice is that, you know, obviously we know that everyone's a little bit different. Everyone has their own, you know, metabolically, everyone's a little bit different. Some people are a little further down the rabbit hole and have been in kind of this larger state for a longer period of time. They didn't gain that weight overnight. They're definitely not going to lose it overnight. And so sometimes they don't make big responses until a little bit higher dose. The reasonable expectation that has been fairly well agreed upon amongst weight loss experts has been expect about 1 to 2 pounds per week. Additional weight loss is okay, but you have to be reasonable with yourself and realize that as this stepwise process happens, sometimes that 4 pounds is just in 1 week, and the other 2 weeks of the month, 3 weeks of the month, you were kind of standing still because you were on more of a plateau. So, you know, you have to be, you know, manage your own expectations a little bit. So your neighbor that's on it may lose 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks. You're not your neighbor. You may have that success and be excited that way, but your success may be slower. And so, you know, getting in this comparison mode is probably not a great plan for the mental side of this. So what I'm seeing in practice is that, you know, be reasonable. Try to get to the point where between your lifestyle changes and maybe even some extra activity and things like that and the medication can meet in the middle and result in hopefully 1 to 2 pounds per week, maybe a little bit more. And so I know we've all seen more than that, but it's, if you're reasonable with yourself, 1 to 2 pounds a week is a reasonable expectation. And just knowing that actually the studies talked about that at the higher doses. So anything you get at the really low doses is just bonus. And so.
And don't be discouraged with that. Like this is a long-term thing. And like you mentioned earlier, it has taken a long time to gain a lot of weight. It really, in a healthy way, it takes quite some time to really get rid of that in a way that you can maintain that lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, your body needs time to adjust. I mean, you'll look better, you'll feel better. You know, drastic weight loss often comes with, you know, lose 30 pounds in a month. Oftentimes is followed up by having difficulty losing additional weight because of extremes. So we're not promoting extremes here. We want people to be healthier. And part of that being healthier is losing weight in a reasonable fashion, and that's going to be a little different for everyone. But be patient with yourself if you're not one of these people dropping 15 pounds in the first month, because it'll happen. You need to be able to find your own pace, and as the medication is titrated up, you will get to the point where metabolically your body is really just functioning better. Your appetite's suppressed, and you'll be able to make that progress.
Yeah, and that helps your overall health, especially with a lot of conditions that come from like inflammation alone.
Yeah,
All disease.
Yeah, all disease. Okay, well, thanks very much.
Yeah, it was
Appreciate
great.
it.
Good to
to be
see you
with you
guys.
guys.
Good to sit so close to you.
Yeah.